first I want to assure the president that Seattle is fine. I'm not sure what he's so afraid of, and what he's depicting to the nation just isn't true. I spent time in the area today talking to people, listening to their concerns, talking about what brought them there, what they want to see for our city and for community. I don't know why the president is so afraid of democracy. Free speech is part of who we are. It's how we started as a nation. We will be fine in Seattle. We don't need the president's help.
Yeah, man, it's just free speech when people with guns seize an area of a city and say the cops no longer have authority there. Man, yeah, that's what the Seattle mayor, Jenny Durkin, has to say about the Chaz, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. Well, let's actually hear from somebody who really knows what's going on there, because he was just there. He was inside the Chaz in Seattle, this little quasi-secessionist anarchist movement. We got Julio Rosas with us now. He is a senior writer at townhall.com. Julio, good to have you on, man. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Buck. I appreciate it.
Okay, tell us. You were there. You were seeing the sights and sounds, and I'm sure the smells, because I remember what it was like at Occupy Wall Street. Tell me about it, man. What's going on in the Chaz in Seattle?
So the latest development in the Chaz is actually that there's a growing momentum and a growing consensus to actually rename it to CHOP, which could either stand for the Capitol Hill, which is the neighborhood that it's in, the Capitol Hill Occupied or Occupy protest, so, similar to the Occupy Wall Street.
Wait, they're going to call it Occupy? I said this was going to happen last week. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Look at that. Go ahead.
Or the Capitol Hill organized protest, which, as I can tell you firsthand, it's not very well organized. It's starting to now, just because they've been there for a while. But the first week that it was Chaz, it was not very well organized. So part of the reason why they want to rename it from the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone is because, as I've documented and as others have documented, they're not very great at being an autonomous state. They're very much still reliant on the city and the state government. They're still using power and water from the city. They called the fire department to put out a actual dumpster fire that started right outside of the zone because it threatened to set the building that it was right next to on fire. The city has provided porta potties, and they're servicing them. And so naturally they're being made fun of for not being an autonomous state. So that's why they're trying to rebrand.
So they're autonomous, Julio.
Someone made the joke that they're already rewriting history a weekend.
Right. I mean, but they're autonomous in the way that kids who set up a tent in their parents' living room and say no one else allowed are autonomous. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not like they're being allowed to do this, and they can always sneak into the kitchen, so to speak, and get a snack when they want. But I want to know, are they really blocking? Like, do cops not go into this area? Will they prevent law enforcement from entering? Because that's where this starts to feel like some Lord of the Flies craziness.
Yes. So they've declared, like I said, they declared it as a cop-free zone. So on Friday, there was actually some tension because 2 cops were allowed to enter into the zone, and half the crowd wanted to prevent and make sure that nothing happened to them to enter the East Precinct, which is where it's kind of the whole centered around. And the other half of the crowd was very upset because they were saying, well, why are we letting cops in? This is going against everything that we've been fighting for the past 10 days. They shouldn't be allowed inside. And so that kind of caused some division. But generally, yes, cops aren't allowed inside the zone. They are allowing residents because there's like. But
hold on. Just once, just because this is important. This is important. Have cops tried to go in? I mean, I don't understand this. Like if a squad car pulls up, are they saying, nope, you're not, sorry, like you're not going into this zone?
Yeah. No, a few, some bike patrol officers kind of went to the perimeter of it, and they were met with immediate resistance, and they didn't allow them inside. So the bike cops stayed around for a few minutes, but then they left. So generally, yes, the cops are not allowed inside.
This is amazing. I mean, they've actually then ceded a piece of territory from law enforcement to control to this degree of like anarchic Occupy nonsense. I mean, the city of Seattle is in on this, right? I mean, so tell me what else. Go ahead.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Because one of the protesting is being led by a very socialist councilwoman, Chawant. That's how they gained access to City Hall, because they marched from the zone to City Hall, and she let them in because she has a key to the building, and so that's how they're able to enter and demand the resignation of the Seattle mayor. And so, absolutely. This is being the city government is taking a appeasement approach to this. And as history tells us, appeasement only works as a short-term solution. And there doesn't seem to be any plans from the city government anytime soon to take back that area. I can't say that the police are working on plans to obviously take, because they didn't want to give up their precinct. This wasn't their decision. But it's just a matter of if the city government will allow them to take it back. And I can say that it doesn't look like the city is going to allow them to take back that area anytime soon.
To the point,
and the protesters aren't planning on leaving anytime
we're
soon.
Speaking to Julio. That's what I want to ask you about. We're speaking to Julio Rosas of townhall.com, who was just in the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. I appreciate you explaining also why they call it Capitol Hill, because that's the neighborhood in Seattle, because it seems like, what does this have to do with what's going on Capitol Hill in D.C.? And I know that people have had that question for a while. But I also need to just get your sense of, Occupy Wall Street, which I covered from the very beginning until the very end, as did a million other journalists. I think there are more journalists than people actually occupying it at the time. But I was there for all of it, and it was clear. I mean, at one point they set up, green military surplus tents, and they had generators, and people were donating stuff, and it was clear they weren't going anywhere for months. Is that what you're seeing with the Capitol Hill Autonomous? And by the way, have they officially changed the name, or is that still underway? Any of both of those questions?
So they're really trying to call it CHOP now. That's what they're really trying to call it now. But I'm still calling it Chaz, because that's how most people still know it as, because it was the first week. They're not planning on leaving anytime soon. I mean, they're even if people aren't planning on staying out there, we have to remember, right? This is a very progressive city. This is a very liberal city. So the neighborhood is generally supportive of this zone occupation, and so they're donating all sorts of food, non-perishable water, toiletry items, tents, clothes. So from the time that I got there on Tuesday, which is like really the first full day of them getting control of this area, till when I left early Sunday, there's probably about close to 80 tents set up, and I know that there's more that have been set, because there's a park right next to it, and that's where they're kind of staying. There's some tents inside the zone, like on the street, but they're planning on being there for the long haul, because they're using this as a bargaining chip to have the city defund and dismantle the police department. But that's just the first demand. They really want to use this as a springboard to advance some of their other progressive agendas, like more taxation on Amazon and big corporations in the city, more funding towards social justice programs. This is they're not going to give it anytime soon, and they're going to stay there as long as the government allows them to stay there.
And I need to ask you, were you when you were there, did you feel like your safety was an issue at all? Were you telling people you were a journalist, or were you just kind of incognito going around? Yeah, so I did not identify myself as a journalist, not in the slightest. And the reason for that is because there was a local Fox reporter for the local station. She was mobbed on Monday night. And I can say that the zone is very much operating in a way like North Korea does, in the sense of they are more than happy to show the media all the good side of it. The block party atmosphere and all that, and of course the media is more than happy to run with that. But as soon as fights start breaking out, which happened a lot, or some bad things were happening in the zone, and I started recording that, I was approached multiple times to not record that, and they said they didn't want it on the internet or else it was going to give the zone a bad name. And it's like, well, it's happening right out in the open. This isn't happening in the street. This isn't happening in some dark secluded room. And did you see people open carrying firearms as well? Because that was a big part of this. Which I suppose semi-automatic rifles inside city limits in Seattle, I suppose that's legal. Do you know? Is that the case? And then, for example, here in New York, you can have rifles. Yeah. There's guns in the state that you can't have in the city. So I'm assuming the Seattle stuff, those were legal weapons that were being held, at least as far as we know. But are you still seeing people walk around with guns? Because that was not at Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah. Yeah, no. People are there with guns. And the thing that I want to stress here, because it's hard for people that aren't in Seattle to report on accurately, because it's such a loose coalition of groups, and there's so many different types of people there at any given time. The atmosphere is different, literally changes by the hour. So, it could be very peaceful one minute, and then it could be very, very dark the next minute, just because it's such a free-flowing and fluid state in flux. I mean, it's really, really weird. And so, yeah, you'll have some people on the barricades that are armed, and then the next hour there's people there that aren't. It's just is this the best way I can describe it? It's a very fluid situation. There is leadership starting to emerge now, just because they've been there for a while, and now they're starting to recognize, who's kind of in charge. But I mean, they've held that area for almost a week now, and they're just now finally starting to solidify a process to have their voices heard and have people call the shot.
Are they making demands? And then also, do we know if there have been any police calls for serious crimes, for felonies inside the CHOP that have not been answered? But sorry, I'm throwing two questions at you. First, start with the demands, and then tell me about the police calls, because I know the Seattle police commissioner seemed to be saying that this is a problem from her perspective. But start with the demands.
Yes. So there, as I said before, the first and foremost, kind of the common demand that everyone has is the defunding and dismantling of the Seattle Police Department, and that's important because we have, as this whole debate nationwide about what defunding the police actually means, because you have Democrats saying, oh, well, it doesn't actually really mean abolishing the police departments, but I can tell you that the people that are out in the streets, whether it's here in Minneapolis or Los Angeles or Seattle, they are for the complete abolishment of the respective police department. And they have a list of 30 demands, and like I said, it's a wide range of more jobs, more programs, more art programs, things of that nature. In terms of, I'm sorry, what was the other question again?
Oh, just also the Seattle police commissioner, if memory serves, said that she's gotten a bunch of 911 calls from inside the CHOP. Have there been any serious calls that have been unanswered or that the police can't answer because they're not allowed in?
Yes. So I know that there was questions about extortion from local businesses. I didn't see any evidence of that, and I believe actually the Seattle police walked back that the businesses were being extorted. But however, one of the station, I believe it was the precinct chief, was telling protesters when they went inside into the East Precinct that their 911 response to that area had increased by 15 minutes because the streets are blocked off.
That's right, yeah.
And obviously they're not allowed inside. Generally, they're not allowed to come in full force. So from what I could, and from last night, there was another incident where there was a local business that was accused of holding someone at gunpoint, and obviously police weren't allowed to respond to that because there was other people from the zone with guns trying to figure out. They were trying to self-police, and they were trying to investigate what went down. And as you can tell, obviously, it didn't turn out too well. It wasn't a really clean investigation.
Julio Rosas, everybody, doing great work over at townhall.com. Check him out there. Follow him on social media. Julio, great stuff, man. Be careful out there, okay? And come back and tell us if you go in again. Let us know what the CHOP is up to.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This is a turning point in the economy. Besides the great jobs numbers, you've had a lot of positive green shoot indicators, Jake, and we don't want to interrupt that. Besides the job figures, you're going to get big retail sales numbers reported next week on Tuesday. Already department and merchandise sales week to week are above year-ago levels. You've got an Apple Mobility Index that's practically pre-pandemic, showing that people are traveling. You've got new business applications are skyrocketing. And by the way, small businesses are now about 80% reopening. So this is all positive news coming off the pandemic. We are in the recovery stage.
So you have a very clear fight happening right now. One between those who believe that the United States getting reopened and people allowed to return to their jobs, economic activity, is a good thing, just irrespective of the politics, that we should all want to happen because it's good for all Americans. That is the position now that the White House and most of the Republican Party finds itself in. There are some lockdown Republicans, which is mind-blowing to me, but they do exist. But then again, there's also never Trump lunatics, so who cares? Then on the other side of this, you have the Democrats, the left, who are clearly rooting against an economic recovery. And that's why the way that this gets reported, to go back to how the media is the center of all the country's problems right now. I mean, the worst stuff that is happening in America, the lockdowns, the racial discord over the shootings, and then the protests, and then the riots and everything else that's happening in this country. All of the things that are going on in America right now that are bad, you can trace to left-wing media capitalizing on and rooting for and promoting throughout the country. To folks who are living in states that aren't overrun by psychotic liberals who are developing their own autonomous zones and such, you may be thinking, well, it doesn't really affect me. No. As we see, whether it's from the Supreme Court or whether it is from corporations making decisions in major cities that have, they're controlling the programming on your TV screen. They're controlling the social media apps on your computer and social media platforms on your computer, the apps on your phone. Don't think that the national conversation affects every American everywhere you are, even if you don't care what people are saying day to day in the national conversation, right? And conversation is too polite a word for it. The propaganda fight that is underway right now. Whether you're listening to this in the most rural parts of West Texas, or you're like me, stuck behind insane Democrat lines in New York or Los Angeles or Baltimore, or name your city. This is going to be a nasty fight in the months ahead, one that affects every aspect of your life. Your very freedom to leave your home, your ability to do your job, the industry you're in, the sector you're in, all of this is being determined by politics, not by the economy. Not right now. They have a lock, if they can get it, right? If they can keep the control, they will have a lock on every aspect of your day-to-day life. They are drunk with this power. But for them to continue to have it, they've got to suppress and oppress the American people into this fear pandemic. And add on top of that, this sense that the country's race relations are at some kind of desperate low, when that's not the America that we're all actually seeing.
It's time for roll call.
Indeed it is. Roll call time, everybody. Woo! But first we check in with our buddy, the backbone of all things Freedom Hut. The man, he's not really behind the scenes because you hear from him every day, but, making sure that, the trains run on time here and all that. Producer Mark, how was your weekend, sir? Tell us some fun stories.
It was good, but how do I make the trains run on time? I can't make you get to work on time.
Well, we'd like to pretend that.
Oh, we pretend that we're on time. We're like the Long Island Railroad. We're like 10 to 15 minutes late, always.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, no, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
I also appreciate when you remind me of conference calls and things for work that I have to do, because otherwise I forget all of those. So thank you for that.
Yes, a secretary for Buck is now part of my job description.
He's very good. He doesn't even have one of those trapper keepers or those planners, but he still manages to remember everything, which I appreciate.
Yes, all I do is set a reminder on my phone, which is something you could easily do, but you just forget to set the reminder.
You're so much better at it, though.
Oh, yes, of course.
You do such a good job. Did you have any yummy treats over the weekend? Anything fun with Mrs. Mark?
Oh, yeah, Mrs. Mark went to Trader Joe's and picked up some great stuff, so definitely had some fun with that. Trader
Joe's actually pretty gluten-free friendly. That's a good, there's not one anywhere near me in New York. And the Snow Princess even asked me over the weekend, do you have a Trader Joe's here? I said, no, it's a long way to go to get to Trader Joe's for me.
Is cookie butter gluten-free? Probably not, right?
I don't think so. Anything cookie, unless it's specifically gluten-free flour, is not.
Because just ask Snow Princess. Cookie butter is like a godsend.
Well, she's an amazing baker, and she made, and I brought some to my parents who live nearby. She made a peach and blueberry cobbler from scratch. That was the most. I had to give a big chunk of it away because, when you have a big platter like that, and you realize that this is enough pastry for 20 servings or something,
sure,
and you realize you've already gotten through half of it, that's when it's time to. And the gym is still not open in my building, so the
Same
belly
here.
is just getting bigger every day. But she made it. It was amazing. And then I tried, just because I had some old bananas, which are the best for banana bread. I made some banana bread, and she was very sweet and supportive. But my baking skills versus her baking skills is like all the other radio hosts, except for Rush, who's the greatest of all time, versus the Buck Sexton radio show. It just doesn't measure up. It just doesn't measure up.
At least you tried. I have good banana bread here.
Banana bread. When banana bread is good, it is.
With some chocolate chips in it, too?
Oh, of course, yeah. Of course.
You can't have no chocolate chips in your banana bread. That's communism.
I know. I told the Snow Princess that I want her to start making some cooking videos. And so I've thought about how we could do that because she's really good. Like, she's amazing. I cook okay. I'm good with red meat, and that's about it. Other than that, I'm like, throw some lettuce on the side of the plate. There you go, complete meal. She does the whole thing. So.
I think that's content for our YouTube page. You and the Snow Princess, little cooking videos.
Yeah, I'm just scared to see what all the male comments would be underneath it, but that's okay.
Put her in a smock.
Yeah, I was going to say we're going to have to put her in a burqa, and she can cook in that. All right, Facebook.com/Buck Sexton, or you can go email us, teambuck@iheartmedia.com. Plus, as you know, on Fridays, we do our little freestyle with the voicemail box, and producer Mark loves staying up late at night listening to all your voicemails all week in preparation for it. So that is 844-900-BUCK. Just call in. You'll hear Mark's lovely voice, and then you'll be told to leave a message. 844-900-2825. So there we go. Indeed. Don writes, hey, Buck, you're great, but that producer Mark, what an amazing asset. That's how we started off, of course. What an amazing asset to the show. I'm out here in Denver listening to Freedom 93.7. Yeah, Denver. We love our Denver folks, man. Our audience in Denver is rock solid, super loyal, clearly passing the buck, telling other people to listen on Freedom 93.7. In Denver, please do listen out there. Tell people about it. The COVID hoax has me really steaming. My mom lived in assisted living around the block. They were locked down in March. She went into hospice care in May. She passed away last Sunday at 91. Oh, man, Don, I'm so sorry to hear that. I was unable to go see her while she was still lucid in March, April, or May. And then because I was driving Grubhub and feared I would bring it in asymptomatically, I did not go see her once she was in hospice until the day she passed. At the time, she was already unresponsive. More stories of the deaths of seniors who did not have COVID-19 but died being ripped from family and loneliness are going to come out into light. Shields high. And one for my mom, Irene. Don, Irene is in our thoughts and prayers, and God bless you and yours. I'm so sorry for your loss. As to your points here about the restrictions and the lack of just basic rights that you were afforded for visiting your beloved mother, yes, this has been the case across the country with thousands, with perhaps millions of people now, where they were denied very basic rights because of the social distancing mania, right? It was a mantra that turned into a mandate. You must socially distance or else you're a bad person. Unless you're a protester that's like, yeah, burn things down, break the system. Then you don't have to social distance. Then the Democrat politicians and the media and the left are all fine with it. It's a disgrace. And people are angry about this, and they should be. Angry. I don't mean that they should oppose. They should be outraged. There should be feelings of fury about what state governments have done to people who they claimed were being reckless if they tried to live their lives. And now they just kick the doors wide open for these lunatic left-wing crybaby protesters and Antifa and all the rest of it. All this garbage that you're seeing where people they're complaining about how we haven't spent enough on education, or we haven't done this or that. And I'm seeing all these all these liberals in my own city who are just talking about whatever issue they want. It doesn't mean gun control. They show up at these marches. It has nothing to do with anyone's life in terms of protecting life. It's just about, whatever they feel like protesting today. And, they all cry and they freak out about it. Man, it's really insane. Ian, hello, Buck. I really enjoy your show. You are steadily working your way into the pantheon of great conservative voices and leaders. Thanks, Ian. My question is, do you think Keith Ellison has overcharged the officer in the George Floyd case in order to make a conviction more difficult? We already know that he is an Antifa apologist and is diabolical. If there is no conviction, can you imagine what will happen afterwards? Ian, I don't think it is likely that is. I think Keith Ellison is overcharging because that will look good to the people that he's trying to placate and pander to. I don't think he's doing it so that there will be and remember, they can also, I think it varies depending, but usually they can have, the jury can be instructed to go for a lesser count. And so they might charge murder 2, but then also give the jury the opportunity to go for manslaughter, which would be murder 3. And so I don't think that Keith Ellison is overcharging so that there will be an innocent, or I should say a not guilty verdict from the jury, and then there'll be more riots. I don't think that's what's going on. I think he's overcharging because then he looks like he's doing everything possible and everything he can to show how terrible this was and to punish this law enforcement officer to the fullest possible extent, including to overpunish him in a sense. I mean, it was, to me, this case, I mean, it's manslaughter. He should go away for whatever it is, 15 to 20, or maybe it's 20 to life. But looking at life possibly without the possibility of parole, that's, your life is ruined. I mean, people really get into this. If your life is kind of ruined either way, he's not gonna see daylight, this officer, outside of a prison cell until he's so old that at that point, you'll wonder how much time does he really even have left. That's what he's facing. Clay, Buck, regarding shooting up in the air, about 10 years ago, a guy in my MP unit was shot in the shoulder while serving in Iraq. It was due to celebratory gunfire at a wedding a couple blocks away, Shields High. Yeah, Clay, I know. I remember there was an officer, military officer, who was hit in the face. I don't think it hurt him that. I mean, he got hit, but it was at an angle, so it really was more of a flesh wound. But I got hit in the face with an AK round, and it was from the same thing, celebratory gunfire. Yeah, those bullets come down at bullet speed, and they will penetrate. They will go right through. It's like being hit with a bullet, because that's what it is. So I hope he's shot in the shoulder. Hopefully he was okay from that. But yeah, anybody who spends any time around firearms knows you do not shoot those things up in the air. That is reckless. You are risking lives if you do that. Jacqueline, roll call. All those people from Austin are telling the truth. I'm pretty sure you would hate it there. I lived there for 3 years, and it's full of hipsters, libs, and dirty hippie types. The rest of Texas is okay, but Austin isn't like the rest of Texas. At one time, it was a great place to live, but that time has passed. I find it hilarious that people in New York think Austin is some kind of haven. I assure you it is not. Producer Mark, you don't have to pay these people, from Team Buck, Florida, to keep writing in these emails for us.
I know it's a fun narrative to say that I'm doing that, but I swear I'm just copy and pasting these messages that we keep getting. I have to put some. I have to not put some in because we get so many of them.
I don't know what Facebook group Producer Mark has started on the weekends where it's Team Buck, Florida represent.
Sure.
And they're just trashing Austin all the time. But I'm just saying, it's working, Producer Mark. It's working. We're getting closer and closer to those leases for the Freedom Hut in Florida.
I'll take credit if it works. I'll take credit for it. Sure.
There we go. But we'll get some more. We'll get some more people. But the question, where in Florida remains the. Although I keep hearing that actually, like Pensacola, the Gulf Coast is great. That's what everyone's telling me. Beautiful beaches, really low cost of living, high quality of living. So the Panhandle starting to sound like that could be the place. Because, you get down into Miami, a lot of libs. Beautiful beach. A lot of fun stuff, but a lot of libs. right, roll call continues. And remember, please go check out bucksexton.com, where we are posting from the show. You can also listen to the podcast there, all kinds of fun stuff. And also, let's continue to pass the buck, the podcast. Please tell people about it so we keep having our numbers go up and up and up. Very, very important for all of us. Kate writes in, "Hi, Buck. Found your podcast again. Loved you back when on the Blaze, and so glad I started listening again. Producer Mark is a great ad. Listen to Thursday's show today. How ironic is it that the woke libs are refusing to show Gone with the Wind when Hattie McDaniel was the first African-American woman to win an Oscar in 1940 for her role in that movie? You'd think we should be celebrating her." Well, first of all, great to have you back in the Freedom Hut, Kate, and please do spread the word to friends and people in your circle that they can listen to the Buck Sexton Show very easily on podcasts, on the iHeart app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can just go to bucksexton.com. The podcast is there. And as for, Gone with the Wind, so I told you I'm not committing to Gone with the Wind. It's just I can't watch a 4-hour-long movie. I can't do it. Producer Mark has pointed out that there are some good, and producer Nick also weighed in on this one, that there are some good 3-hour-long movies. The Godfather, it's worth it. Of course, Braveheart, the greatest movie ever made, worth it. It's funny. I don't have an all-time favorite book. That would be a tough conversation a tough call for me to make. But Braveheart's the best movie ever made. It's the best movie ever made. People can talk about it. They can say whatever they want. It's the best movie ever made. But I watched Amadeus over the weekend, which was because I forget even how it came out. I think the Snow Princess wanted to watch it. Producer Mark, have you seen it?
No.
Won 8 Oscars back in the 80s, including Best Film, Best Actor, Best Director. Completely ran the table at the Oscars. And it's kind of fallen off. I don't hear people really ever talk about it anymore. I don't think it's a great movie. What I think is so interesting is the concept behind the movie, which is just you have the genius of Mozart. I mean, clearly the soundtrack is some of the most well-known works by Mozart of all time. So you have what is, I think, not arguably, but maybe even clearly, the greatest soundtrack ever devised by humankind, set to a movie that's kind of meh. A lot of this guy's Salieri all the time. It's all narrated by Salieri, who's played by something Frank Murray, I think is his name. And he won the Best Actor. He won Best Actor for the movie. But it's a lot too much of the Salieri guy, not enough of Mozart. Mozart has this weird laugh that he does all the time that I find kind of... Actually, that was a perfect impersonation for those of you that want to know. But I don't think that Amadeus really... It's the F. Murray Abraham. Thank you, producer Nick. I don't think that the movie really held up all that well, but it's the greatest soundtrack of all time. Which, I mean, Mozart is the greatest musical genius of all time, although I do love Beethoven, and there's a part of me that wants to, I don't know. That's like the Hulk versus the Thing. I mean, you could argue this one forever. Although, did they ever actually fight, producer Mark, the Hulk versus the Thing? Do we know who won?
I not off the top of my head do I know that. Maybe in the comics they did.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. In the comics, did they ever fight and somebody win?
Probably.
Because Beethoven and Mozart, it's like the unstoppable force versus the immovable object. I mean, they're both such geniuses. But anyway, Amadeus, greatest soundtrack ever of all time, any movie. Movie itself was kind of meh. I wasn't a huge fan. Let's see here. Tim. Hey, Buck, I am shocked that corporate America is siding with the libs. How is this happening? Are they afraid of the mob? Is it their PR department saying that it's time to change the company's mission statement so they can target the prime demographics that are so radical? Or do they think they are flaming libs looking for a reason to show their true colors? It's stunning that super successful companies would sell out to the mob that will come back and feed on them. P.S. I've been a super fan since the first time you came on the Blaze Saturday morning. I do miss Commie Bear and Angus the Scottish guy. I love the history specials you did from the Hammer to the Siege of Constantinople, Shields High. Well, Tim, now you're making me feel guilty because I haven't done Malta yet, and producer Mark knows that I haven't done Malta yet because he keeps reminding me, so I'm going to have to do that even though I know it's 2 months late now. But, we have been in lockdown, and I've been very, very busy. But, Tim, I love that you love the work that I've done. Thank you so much, including some of the more fun and out there and creative stuff. And maybe we'll bring some of that back on the show. I don't know. It'd be fun to do, Angus McManus and Commie Bear. So I'll give it some thought because I'm feeling feeling, energetic these days. That's going to be the show team. Thank you for being here. Pass the buck. Tell somebody about this show. Talk to you tomorrow.